Welcome back to The Deep Dive, the show engineered for those of you who need to get to the core of complex topics fast, efficiently, and, thoroughly. If you're someone who values understanding the why behind an argument, not just the what, you are definitely in the right place. Today, we are taking a truly profound deep dive into a very short but incredibly dense set of verses from the Quran. We're looking at Surah Al-An, specifically verses 74 through 83.
Right.
These verses detail Prophet Ibrahim's, that's the biblical Abraham's intellectual quest for the true creator, and that they really lay out a rational foundation for absolute monotheism.
This passage is just pivotal. It's not simply a story, it's a systematic logical proof. It's often hailed as a masterclass in ancient rhetoric and argumentation.
A masterclass, I like that.
Yeah, and our mission today is to analyze this progression of thought, to really understand how it establishes Tawhid, the oneness of God, through pure reason and observation.
And critically, to unpack the huge theological and sociological debates that still surround this very short sequence of verses. Okay, let's unpack this.
So the story doesn't start quietly.
No, not at all. The narrative opens with Ibrahim initiating a really intense, high-stakes conflict. Verse 74 sets the scene. He goes right to his own father, Azar, and his people.
And he confronts them directly. He asks them why they're worshiping idols, these celestial bodies.
He just declares their practice a manifest error, instantly placing himself completely outside the existing social and, religious structure.
It's an act of profound intellectual courage. I mean, the confrontation immediately establishes that the quest for truth has to take priority over family ties or social conformity.
Right.
And this leads directly to the mechanism of discovery. In verse 75, we're told God enabled Ibrahim by showing him the kingdom of the heavens and earth.
The universe itself becomes his textbook.
The textbook and the laboratory for his investigation.
That's such a powerful image, the whole cosmos laid out as evidence. The logical progression that follows is really the core of the argument, and it's almost like an empirical sequence.
It is. The premise it's driving toward is that the creator must be constant and eternal. That's the test.
The test of permanence.
Precisely. So it's night, and Ibrahim begins his observation. The first thing he sees is a bright star, which, commentators generally agree, was likely the planet Venus.
Which was central to a lot of ancient Near Eastern worship.
Oh, absolutely. So he sees it, and he provisionally accepts it. He says, "This is my Lord."
But this hypothesis only lasts until the star does what stars do.
It sets. It disappears below the horizon. The very moment it vanishes, he rejects it with that famous line, "I do not love those that set."
And the rejection is all about transience, isn't it? If this thing he's supposed to worship is only there sometimes, it can't be absolute.
Exactly. If it moves, if it's subject to setting, it must be controlled by something else. So the quest continues. He moves on to the moon, which is brighter, seemingly more powerful.
And he repeats the test. This is my Lord.
But when the moon also sets, his need for guidance is reinforced. He realizes this whole approach is flawed.
Which brings him to the sun. The most brilliant, the most powerful observation in the whole series. He sees it rising and declares, "This is my Lord. This is greater."
And it satisfies that temporary need for a truly mighty, visible force. But, of course,
The sun is also bound by time. It sets, it submits to the same cosmic laws of change.
and that failure, the fact that the mightiest observable thing still changes, moves, and disappears, it just shuts down that entire line of inquiry.
It leads to the conclusion.
The powerful conclusion in verse 79, Ibrahim declares his freedom from polytheism. He turns his face solely toward the one who originated the heavens and earth. The logical rule is now fixed.
Anything that changes, moves, or disappears,
Cannot be the necessary, constant, eternal creator.
that logical foundation is incredibly compelling, but it forces us to talk about the historical backdrop here. Because the Arabs of Muhammad's time, they knew Ibrahim.
No, it certainly did.
They claimed him as their ancestor, the spiritual father of the Kaaba, yet they were deep into idolatry.
Exactly. The tradition they held was, corrupted. They revered Ibrahim through his son Ismail, but had conveniently forgotten his core message.
So they thought they were following his way, even as they filled the Kaaba with idols.
Idols that represented the very celestial bodies he had so logically rejected. So the Quranic narrative had a profound purpose, both political and theological. It was reclaiming and purifying his story.
Showing the Meccans that their own patriarch was actually an enemy of the very idolatry they were practicing.
Precisely.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because critics and academics have pointed out for a long time that this specific, beautiful, rational quest Well, it wasn't entirely unique in the late antique Near East.
No, it wasn't. The argument seems to have been circulating. The sources highlight some very strong textual parallels that show just how widespread this kind of logical argument was.
For instance, in Jewish traditions.
Yes, the same foundational logic, observing the transience of celestial bodies to infer an eternal creator, appears in the Midrash.
Okay, for those of us who might not be familiar, what exactly is the Midrash?
So, Midrash is essentially rabbinic literature. It's the body of interpretation and commentary that often fills in the narrative gaps or provides moral lessons from the Torah. The source here, Genesis Rabbah 38, contains what's known as Agada.
Which is folklore.
Narrative folklore, yes. And in it, Abraham conducts a very similar rational investigation of the universe to discover God.
So that's the Jewish parallel. And there's a Christian one too, right?
Okay.
With the Syriac writer Aphrahat.
Yes, Aphrahat, a major Christian voice in the 4th century. The fact that this same logical structure shows up in his writings is highly significant. It shows this rational method was a common intellectual tool.
Used by everyone.
Adopted by Jewish, Christian, and later Muslim thinkers throughout late antiquity to prove monotheism against pagan traditions.
So this gives us two different viewpoints on the origin of this story, and we have to be strictly neutral here, just reporting what the sources say.
Absolutely. The academic or critical view would argue that the Quran adapted this very compelling argument from existing Jewish folklore, the Agada, seeing it as a powerful piece of circulating rhetoric.
Which doesn't necessarily take away from its power, but it does place it in a specific historical context.
Right. Then you have the traditional Muslim view, which holds that the Quran is the divine confirmation and correction of true prophetic history.
So the similarities exist because the truth of Tawhid is universal and one.
Exactly. The message was consistent. So it's just confirming a universal truth, regardless of which vessel it came in temporarily.
Both views recognize the immense power of the argument. But understanding this context leads us straight into the biggest theological debate around this passage.
Without a doubt.
When Ibrahim said, "This is my Lord," was he really searching for God in that moment, or was he already a believer?
That is the critical question when you look at verses 76 through 78. If he was truly searching, it validates a path of doubt. If he was already guided, it's a brilliant performance.
Let's start with view A, the seeker.
Okay, this is the minority view. It suggests Ibrahim was young, genuinely searching. He momentarily considered the celestial bodies as potential gods, maybe following what everyone else was doing.
Before his intellect forced him to reject them.
Yes, based on their physical limitations.
So what's the implication if we accept view A?
Well, it profoundly humanizes the prophet. It makes the path to conviction a relatable struggle. It validates genuine confusion and doubt as a necessary, maybe even a divinely sanctioned path to conviction for the rest of us.
It validates the seeker's journey.
Exactly.
But that's not the majority view. The orthodox view is completely different.
Completely. They adhere to view B, the debater. They argue Ibrahim was already a prophet and a pure monotheist Hanif.
Let's pause on Hanif. That's a loaded term. We often just say monotheist, but what does it really mean in this context?
The concept of the Hanif is essential here. In that Arabian context, a Hanif was someone who followed the pure monotheism of Abraham, the original indigenous faith, before Judaism or Christianity were codified.
A pure, unadulterated worshiper of the one God.
That's it. So according to view B, Ibrahim was already a Hanif. Therefore, his statements, "This is my Lord," were not genuine declarations of faith. They were acts of rhetorical irony.
So he was performing a kind of reductio ad absurdum. He was temporarily adopting his opponent's flawed premise just to dismantle it in public.
Precisely. He was meeting them on their own turf, using their own logic to lead them to an inevitable, rational contradiction. And the justification is powerful. The Quran says he was guided before this whole celestial argument even begins.
Right, back in verse 75.
So a guided prophet wouldn't genuinely fall into polytheistic error, even for a moment.
But isn't that a tricky interpretation? If a prophet faked his search, doesn't that undermine the sincerity of the journey for the rest of us?
And that's the tension. Those who hold view A argue exactly that view B makes the rational inquiry feel less authentic. But followers of view B would counter that Ibrahim was doing this not for himself, but for his people.
His goal wasn't personal conviction.
No, he already had that. His goal was public persuasion. He showed them how their own sensory observations forced the conclusion that celestial objects are transient and powerless. He needed a God who is always living, always present, al-Hayy, al-Qayyum.
This whole debate brings us to a really crucial and sensitive, modern point. Ibrahim's entire method is built on asking profound questions. So if he modeled this kind of sincere inquiry, why do some communities today react with hostility or even threats towards people who ask similar honest questions?
This is where theology hits sociology, and the tension is immense. The theological reality, as you said, is that the Quran encourages questioning. The text is constantly challenging the reader. Do they not reflect? Do they not reason?
So Ibrahim's method is the quintessential model of prophetic inquiry.
It is. The societal fear, though, stems overwhelmingly from cultural insecurity. It's a deeply rooted fear of fitna, which means civil strife, dissension, social chaos. In many cultural contexts, especially those under pressure, questioning a core belief isn't seen as a private search for truth. It's immediately perceived as a public act of defiance that threatens the entire social fabric.
So sincere doubt gets conflated with a malicious challenge to the system.
Exactly. A young person asking, "How do we know the star didn't work?" isn't seen as an Ibrahim. They're seen as someone planting seeds of chaos, or worse, adopting the agenda of outside critics. Silence is seen as the way to maintain stability.
It's an incredible irony. The person using their intellect to verify truth, following the prophetic way of seeking, is often treated like an internal enemy.
When in reality, faith built on those hard-won, sincere answers is so much stronger than faith built on mandated silence.
Absolutely. That's a key takeaway. Ibrahim's quest gives permission to investigate. Now, let's move this ancient logic into a more modern framework.
Okay.
His line of reasoning directly mirrors one of the most famous arguments for God's existence,
Yes, the cosmological argument.
which is the philosophical idea that everything contingent, everything that changes or sets, needs an external, necessary, uncaused first cause to even exist.
It's the exact same structure. Ibrahim looked at things contingent on time, the star, moon, sun, and rejected them in favor of the necessary being. And his method: observe, hypothesize, test, conclude. It's basically the scientific method applied to spiritual truth.
And even outside of faith traditions, his story holds this tremendous secular power. Secular humanism sees Ibrahim as a powerful symbol of intellectual independence.
Of course, a figure who chose truth and logic over tradition, family, and social stability. It's the ultimate story of following reason wherever it leads, no matter what.
And while critics today might say the argument is weak against modern atheism since we understand physics,
They still recognize it as brilliant, persuasive rhetoric for its time. It was the perfect intellectual weapon against the idol and star worship of the late Near East.
and this universality gives us our final moral and intellectual lessons.
Right. First, there's the lesson of critical thinking. Don't just inherit beliefs. You have to observe, test, and verify for yourself.
Second, courage. The bravery it takes to stand against family, society, tradition, everything, for the sake of what you found to be true.
And finally, rejecting blind conformity. The realization that logic and reason have to stand above superstition, and that truth stands above lineage. It's a call to rational conscience.
It's the intellectual pathway to submission.
Well said.
So what does this all mean? The story of Ibrahim's rational quest in Surah Al-An is so much more than an ancient biography. It's an enduring, universal call to use our intellect. It asks us to look beyond the immediate physical world, the cosmos itself, to find the ultimate, unchanging cause of existence.
It's really the defining argument for monotheism through reason.
It really is.
And we'll leave you with this provocative thought. The ultimate message of this deep dive is that genuine belief is founded on active intellectual engagement. A true seeker observes, thinks, concludes, and is not silenced by culture or fear of fitna. If you found this logical progression compelling, we suggest you explore the related narrative, the Quranic description of Ibrahim's debate with the king, Nimrod. It demonstrates a similar, courageous pattern of using rational, observable facts against temporal power.